Good evening, America, and happy tax day. I know it's not happy for most of us, but anyways, welcome to the Tuesday edition of Just the News, No Noise. I'm your host, John Solomon, reporting to you as always from Washington, D.C. and the wiredtofishcoffee.com studios. You know, this Wired to Fish coffee is the official coffee of Just the News. You can get these incredible things. You get these great mugs from Just the News, incredible blends of coffee, the medium roast, my favorite personal one, and you can get it for 10% off. How do you do that? By going to wired2fishcoffee.com. Use the promo code JustNews or just point your camera to that QR code. That'll get you started just as quickly. All right, a lot to talk about today. I wanted to stop for a second on tax day because today is the last tax day for which the Trump tax cuts will be in effect unless Congress acts. And I just want to remind people, if Congress does not act next year, almost all of us, everyone watching tonight, will have a much higher tax bill. It's a number one priority. We're going to talk about that with two members of Congress in a little bit in the show, but just a reminder of how consequential that will be. All right, another day and another drama playing out between the courts and Donald Trump. That sounds familiar, right? It's like clockwork at this point. And today, the focus is on Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the migrant that was deported by the Trump administration after accusations that he was an MS-13 gang member. Abrego Garcia has denied those allegations, but he was deported anyway, sent back to a Salvadoran jail that President Trump and Salvadoran President Bukele struck a deal to send violent illegal aliens to. That has created a lot of legal uncertainties, with a federal judge ruling that Garcia should be allowed back into the country. In fact, that judge just held a hearing a few minutes ago, very contentious hearing, very upset with the Trump administration. Now, the Supreme Court also issued a ruling that said the administration must facilitate bringing Abrego Garcia back. However, today the Supreme Court said, we'll give you more time. Convince us otherwise. The Trump administration says their hands are tied now that Abrego Garcia, who is an El Salvadoran citizen, is back in his home country. Lawyers for Abrego Garcia were in front of that Maryland judge that originally ordered him to be returned to the United States. As I said earlier today, they argued for the Trump administration should bring him back immediately, or at least formally request to El Salvador that he be released. We're going to keep an eye on that all throughout the night over at justthenews.com and here, of course, at Real America's Voice. One other programming note, we may be going down to Georgia in a little bit. There's a town hall involving Marjorie Taylor Greene, the chairwoman of the DOJ subcommittee, one of the more important members in Congress these days. She's going to be talking to her constituents. There's rumors that protesters, maybe paid protesters, are going to create a disruption there. If that happens, we're going to take you down to Brian Glenn and live to that. But in the meantime, it's a great time to bring in my amazing co-host, Amanda Head. She's got some other headlines. What are you watching, Amanda?
Listen, if all that they want is a formal request to return Abrego Garcia, I think the Trump administration should formally request it, see what happens.
Did you wink your eye there? I couldn't see it there. That might have been. Okay,
I got something in it. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, I want to start with the Ivy League and Harvard specifically. We spoke about this a little bit last night, but some more news has been made in the battle between Harvard and the Trump administration since then. It started this morning with a Truth Social post sent out by President Trump. He wrote, "Perhaps Harvard should lose its tax-exempt status and be taxed as a political entity if it keeps pushing political, ideological, and terrorist-inspired supporting sickness. Remember, tax-exempt status is totally contingent on acting in the public interest." And that is after the Trump administration already froze $2.2 billion in federal grants and $60 million in contracts to Harvard after the university refused to comply with DEI policy changes requested by the federal government. And that, of course, led Harvard to respond, saying they would not comply with the Trump administration's demands, even if it came down to losing billions and billions of dollars. And wouldn't you know it, a very famous Harvard alum decided to speak out on this issue too, former President Barack Obama, who said that the way Harvard is handling all of this sets an example for how colleges should reject Trump's demands. He wrote on X, "Harvard has set an example for other higher education institutions, rejecting an unlawful and ham-handed attempt to stifle academic freedom while taking concrete steps to make sure all students at Harvard can benefit from an environment of intellectual inquiry, rigorous debate, and mutual respect." It's worth noting what the Trump administration is asking Harvard to do. It includes implementing merit-based hiring, reforming programs with a history of anti-Semitism, and getting rid of diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. And John, to what he was saying about rigorous debate, considering 97% of professorial staff at Harvard is liberal, I don't think too many rigorous debates are happening in the hallowed halls of Harvard.
Yeah, I didn't see much fairness to conservatives at Harvard for a long time. Yeah. Those three items that the Trump administration is pursuing are just common sense items. I mean, they're 80% issues with the American public. Yeah. Really remarkable. And, I have an idea. If Barack Obama would like Harvard to set an example for other colleges. Maybe Donald Trump can set an example for other colleges by saying, spend your own money. I mean, they got a $50 billion endowment there. I mean, they got plenty of money, and yet they want to keep soaking us.
Yeah, Barry, put your money where your mouth is.
Plus, they charge, what, 50, 60 grand a year to go there? So,
Yeah.
well, I think we're very lucky. Our first guest has a lot to say about this. He's been a champion of common sense spending and cutting spending long before it became fashionable in Washington. He's the chairman of the House Freedom Caucus, Andy Harris. We had a chance to talk to him just a little while ago, just a few minutes back ago. Take a look. Joining us now from the great state of Maryland, the Congressman and House Freedom Caucus Chairman, Andy Harris. Congressman, good to have you back on the show.
Good to be with you.
All right, it's tax day. Everybody's once again lamenting how much we have to turn over to Uncle Sam every year, but it could be a lot worse next year. How important is it to get the tax cuts, and what sort of games are Democrats playing to keep the Trump tax cuts from being renewed?
Well, they certainly want taxes to go up next year. They want the Trump tax cuts to expire. That would be devastating for the economy, devastating for our small businesses, because the only tax that's permanent tax reduction from last time is the corporate income tax. The pass-through small businesses, their taxes would go up. Obviously, every individual's tax would go up. So again, we just don't think that's a good idea for our economy. We don't think that's a good idea for America. So we're going to extend those tax cuts, and then we're going to find ways to pay for some of those tax cuts with spending reduction, which really needs to be done.
Yeah, so important.
On the spending reductions, it certainly seems like the Republican caucus is pretty unified behind that. Are there any stragglers?
Well, I think there's some who are afraid that once we go past about $1 trillion over 10 years, which really is a drop in the bucket, that we're going to have to go into Medicaid. But look, there is plenty of waste, fraud, and abuse in Medicaid. When California is gaming the system to get federal Medicaid dollars so that they can give free health care to illegal immigrants through Medicaid, while middle-class taxpayers have to pay taxes, pay their premiums. California is using federal Medicaid dollars to give free health care to illegal immigrants. That kind of abuse just has to end.
Yeah, $3 billion bailout.
Yeah, it's remarkable. Yeah, and when you look at the polling data, Americans do not like that as a use of their tax dollars. So I want to turn to another place where there's some potential savings. The number one purchased item from SNAP, the food stamp program, is sugary drinks, soft drinks, sodas. Today, the Arkansas governor, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, became the first state to submit an application to ban those sort of purchases. How important is that? It can save money, but also can save health, right?
Well, that's absolutely right. And to be honest with you, other states have tried to do it, but during Democrat administrations, but the Democrat secretaries of agriculture claimed they didn't have the authority to do it, but they actually do. And congratulations to Secretary Rollins for using that authority. And really, sweetened beverages really should be, unless it's a fruit juice, they really shouldn't be allowed to be purchased with nutrition dollars, because that's what the SNAP program is all about. And that amounts to about somewhere between $10 and $15 billion a year. It's a real amount of money that's going to make Americans unhealthy rather than healthy. So I think it's a great decision. I think there are a whole lot more states going to jump on board with that.
Is it something that has to be state by state, or can Congress do something to enforce it?
We could do something, and with President Trump in office, we might do something nationally. Right now, it has to be state by state unless Congress takes action to ban those, again, sugary beverages. We should also be looking at the salty snacks. We should be looking at something that really doesn't add nutrition. And the upside of that is those dollars that people would use to buy sugary beverages, they can buy other things. I actually think we should begin to looking at SNAP and maybe require people to buy only American products with it, so that our farmers and our ranchers, they're the ones who benefit and can sell their products into the SNAP program. I think this is just the start of a very major trend in the SNAP program.
Yeah, and one that's probably long overdue. I think Americans will be excited when they see the outcome of that. There is a gentleman who was in your state for quite some time that's now in an El Salvadoran prison. The media likes to call him a Maryland resident. The Trump administration likes to call him an illegal alien. Tell us what you've been told by the United States government about Mr. Abrego Garcia.
Well, look, the facts are very clear. Mr. Garcia is only a citizen of one jurisdiction, El Salvador. He's not a citizen of Maryland. He's not a citizen of the United States. He's a citizen of El Salvador, and he's back home where he is a citizen. It's now up to El Salvador what they want to do with their citizen. This is not a citizen of the United States. He came here illegally. He never gained citizenship status here. So he's back where he belongs.
Sir, a senator from your state, Chris Van Hollen, claims he's going to go down to El Salvador, and while I doubt he's going to be able to jailbreak this person, I do wonder if Democrats are thinking past the step of bringing him back, because wouldn't he just be rearrested here and go back into our jails? It's either jail there or jail here.
That's right. He's been before immigration court twice, once with an immigration court and then with an appeals immigration court, both of which had found that he was an MS-13 gang member. They will find it again and they will deport him. The amazing thing is that the senator wants to spend U.S. taxpayer dollars to go to El Salvador to go after an El Salvador citizen. I think the average American who pays their taxes just thinks that is an incredible waste of their tax dollars, and I think it is too.
So I want to turn to the work that lies ahead when Congress gets back from the Easter recess. You've got the spending cuts, the big, beautiful bill, the CR. Tell us, we know Mike Johnson's committed to $1.5 trillion. It's kind of hard to tell what the Senate is committed to. Where do you think that this will all turn out when a final bill is ready for passage?
I do think we're going to have at least $1.5 trillion in cuts over the next 10 years. Again, considering that our projected budget deficit is $20 trillion over the next 10 years, $1.5 trillion is really a drop in the bucket. But I think we're going to get there, or maybe even higher, because we now have commitments that this bill will not increase the deficit. That's very important. At a time when our federal debt is at record levels, our federal deficits are at record levels, we can't pass a reconciliation bill that would increase the deficit. I think.
All right, folks, we're going to break out of that really great interview. You can watch all of it at justthenews.com, but there's about a couple minutes left. But we want to turn down to Georgia. We told you that Brian Glenn is down there. Things are heating up at the Marjorie Taylor Greene town hall with her constituents. We're going to bring in Brian Glenn right now. Brian, give us an update. What's going on the ground there?
This is funded. The Democrats have been rioting. They are the party of violence.
All right. So, yeah, we're going to actually just, we're going to take you live to the scene. We'll get Brian on as soon as we get an earpiece and microphone. Guys, why don't we roll what's going on at the hearing right now, if we could?
Let me tell you, this is funded. The Democrats have been rioting. They are the party of violence. They are the party that, go. If you want to listen, you're welcome to listen. Everyone across the aisle, Democrats, Independents, Republicans. This is a good place. You have a lot to learn. And with that, I'll start with our first video. Kayla? My mic needs to be turned on. Okay.
Everyone knows that getting rid of the deficit will require some tough decisions.
A little bit of what's
and that
going
includes
on
cutting
there.
back on
We're going to try to bring in Brian Glenn in a second, I think, and get a little bit more of an update. This has been going on for about 3-4 weeks. It looks like an organized effort from the left, Amanda, to have protesters, probably paid protesters. We think we haven't been able to file in the money yet, but they seem like people that are familiar, protester figures showing up, even in super conservative place, trying to make a racket, trying to make a scene, trying to get the local newspaper, local TV station, or CNN to cover it. It's a stunt, and many times lawmakers try to coddle this, but we think at the end of the day, Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to probably take these guys on straight on. You saw pretty quickly the response he had, which is that Democrats are the party of hatred, she said, and violence and disruption, and we're trying to get the people's business done. So let me check with control room quickly, guys. Do we have Brian yet? We don't. Okay, we're still going to get him to Mike. So All right. Well, Amanda, I think as you look at this, this is going to continue all through the Easter recess.
It is.
It's probably going to happen all through the summer. But at the end of the day, Americans are more interested in seeing progress on the issues they care about rather than protests. They've had their fill of protests for the last 4 or 5 years, and I think I have more of that. All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll have another great interview with another member of Congress. But first, let's hear a word from our great sponsors and partners here at Real America's Voice.
Welcome back, everybody. After a very busy week on Capitol Hill last week, what's next? What's coming down the pike? Congress has a lot to get done: cutting the deficit, balancing the budget, delivering tax relief to Americans, including those tax cuts making them permanent, further securing the border, and so much more. So how do House Republicans do all of that with such a slim majority? Joining us now to discuss that and more, representing the great state of Michigan, Tom Barrett. Joining us now, the congressman from the great state of Michigan, Tom Barrett. Congressman, thank you so much for being here.
Amanda, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, sir. Whether it's this term or even President Trump's first term, he makes a habit of bringing people back home. Of course, he brought NASA astronauts back recently, and then 2 Americans down in Mexico. You were a part of that mission. You said it was a wild ride. Tell us about it.
I was really proud that we were able to bring home Paul and Christy Akeo back home from Mexico. They had been detained at a maximum security Mexican prison over a timeshare dispute with a resort down in Mexico. We were first made aware of this a few weeks into their detention when their daughter, who's a constituent of mine, raised this issue on social media. Kind of became a media story, and I was quickly in contact with their family, and then as well as with the State Department. We had felt after about 5 or 6 days that really the conversations to secure their release were not advancing in the direction we needed them to go. So I decided kind of late in the day, the night before we left, to travel down there as quickly as possible. Took the first flight down to Cancun that we could get the next morning out of Dulles Airport. And their case was supposed to last 6 months to a year, where they were going to be detained at that prison in Mexico that entire time. And we were able to get them, safely returned home off the ground and traveling back to Michigan within 32 hours of when I arrived. So a lot went into that, a lot of negotiations between all the different parties. Worked closely with our State Department folks on the ground there, with the Mexican officials, met with the Mexican Supreme Court, was in contact with the resort company that was in the dispute with the couple, and then worked with the attorneys for the couple back home, as well as their Mexican representation, to get everything done. I can tell you, when I arrived in Mexico, I told the Mexican officials that I was there for one reason: to bring Paul and Christy home, and that I wasn't leaving without them. And 32 hours later, we got on a flight to come back to Michigan, and it was great to see that come together.
They knew you meant business, and that helps a lot. There's no doubt when you come in with a strong play.
I can tell you the unsung hero of the entire occasion was my daughter, Gwen, who turned 8 a couple days after I got to Mexico, and I knew I had to be home for her birthday. So that was the extra motivation to get it
she
done.
Played a starring role.
And get it done on time.
I love it.
That's such a great story. So I want to ask a little bit. I mean, this is a silly dispute about timeshare. We don't put people in prison over timeshare disputes. Is there some backstory to the sentiments in Mexico right now in the Trump era that played into this, or was it just someone overreaching?
Yeah, I didn't see any evidence of a diplomatic reaction from the Mexican government in this case. What I observed was kind of an escalation that went back and forth and ultimately resulted in this thing really getting out of control. And then once it was in the Mexican court system, that is so problematic and has so many bureaucratic delays. Really, I would say 30 or 40% of my effort down there was just getting the Mexican court system to bring their case up for another review, so that we could simultaneously negotiate the outcome with the resort company, so that basically both parties could then move forward. And what we were able to secure at the final outcome of this was that the company and the couple put together a joint statement with neither side taking blame or responsibility. The legal proceeding in Mexico was able to be done where Paul and Christy were not required to plead guilty to anything. There was no assignment of responsibility that way. and then a financial settlement where the couple and the resort company split the difference. There was about $116,000 of disputed charges from this timeshare dispute. They each put a half share of that into a joint amount that went to a Mexican charity that runs an orphanage in Cancun. And Paul and Christy had volunteered at that orphanage on a prior visit they had made to Mexico. So the beneficiary ultimately was this orphanage. Neither side took, responsibility. We also, in the, one of the concessions that we did as I worked on getting a Facebook page taken down that was kind of had assembled a lot of criticisms of the resort company and was urging the release of the couple. So once we were off the ground and on our way back to the United States, I had made a commitment to the resort company that my office and that we would work to diligently take down that page, because that was an interest that they had. And really, for me, my main focus and my exclusive focus really was on bringing Paul and Christy home, whatever that was going to take. And I'm glad we were able to get that done.
That's a big win.
Yeah. Congressman, you serve our nation in a suit on Capitol Hill, but you also serve in uniform. And I know that your very first bill passed last week. Congratulations. Tell us about the Clear Communications for Veterans Claims Act.
Yeah, thank you. And this was really important to me. As you pointed out, I served 22 years in the Army. That's really the biggest, life experience that I've ever had was serving in uniform in the United States Army, and in a major point of pride for me. And the greatest adventure I've ever had was serving in the Army. And so much of what I witnessed and battle buddies that I've served with who've come home and reintegrated back into civilian life have really struggled interfacing with the VA. And we've made some significant strides at improving that. But really right now, if you file a claim with the VA, the bureaucracy that takes place can be really challenging for veterans to navigate. This isn't something that they do every day. This is something they do maybe once ever in their entire life. And sadly, what we found is that a lot of veterans just give up the claims process because it becomes too bureaucratic and too challenging for them. I've done this myself, where you file an application or a claim with the VA and you get a lot of response back from automated systems and computer, interfacing that sends you a letter in the mail. And it's hard to determine, is this just summarizing my claim? Is this acknowledging that the VA received it? Is this an adjudication of my claim? Is this an attempt to ask for more records, either from the military or the medical side of things? So really what this bill will do is it puts veterans in the position of being the ones that what the VA is supposed to do, which is support veterans. And it really requires the VA to use outside counsel, if you will, to really analyze and look at the response that they give to veterans through the exchange of letters back and forth, to make sure that they are done in a way that veterans are going to be able to easily interpret from that what their necessary obligation and response is. So a lot of these are done by bureaucrats within the departments, and they're certainly looking at it from their own lens of the process that they use to process these claims. And really, we want to look at it through the lens of the veterans that are interfacing with the department, and not the other way around. So that's what this bill will do. We hope that it'll serve to benefit veterans who won't feel as frustrated, and then hopefully won't abandon their claims and see them through to the finish line.
Putting the service back in customer service and making it simple, it's going to be hugely appreciated across the entire VA world. So I want to talk a little bit about how the tariffs are playing out in Michigan. It seems to be that people on Main Street in the factories are very happy, and it seems like it puts people like, Gretchen Whitman, sometimes in awkward positions. Your thoughts on how it's playing out in Michigan right now?
Well, I know that Governor Whitmer traveled to Washington, D.C. Everybody saw the photos and video of the governor in the Oval Office interfacing with President Trump. And there you have her on screen covering her face. That was just woefully embarrassing. But, just prior to going to the Oval Office, Governor Whitmer was on some speech and on a panel, and was kind of criticizing some of the application of these tariffs. But then when somebody asked her what she would do differently, she really couldn't cite any specific change she would do other than what President Trump is already doing. And I think Americans understand that we have to have a strong, resilient manufacturing base in our country. There are a variety of reasons. Economic reasons certainly are one of those. But from there, you look at the cultural effect of where we've really degraded the value of work. And the outcome of that is that families struggle. The social fabric that binds our communities together has really degraded. We have 7 million working age men in the United States today that are not seeking work and are not working in America today. That is a huge cultural void. You think of the effect that has on raising families and the responsibility of leadership that, often it falls not entirely on men, but, certainly men tend to be ones that are out working in the economy in the greatest percentage. And really, we now have 7 million men aged 25 to 55 that have really removed themselves from the workforce. They're not even considered unemployed because they're not seeking work. And from a national security lens, we don't have the ability to defend ourselves in battle any longer without being able to build the machinery it takes to do that. And if we have outsourced and offshored so much of that critical infrastructure ability, there could be a time in America where we are going to regret that. And I don't want to see it come to that, certainly. But in the event we do have to defend ourselves someday, we have to make sure that we have the critical ability to do that and that our manufacturing base is resilient. So there's a lot of reasons why some of this is important. The members of the Republican delegation from Michigan recently met with Mary Barra, the CEO of General Motors, and she was giving us example after example of how foreign governments have set up block in barriers to entry for American goods to go into their marketplace. Some of that is tariff related, but some of that is other policies that they enact that just make it very, very difficult for American manufacturers to enter their markets. So I think we all agree something needs to be done about it. President Trump has really grabbed the reins to do that. And I think that Americans respect and understand that these things, don't happen in a vacuum. But on the other end of this, the outcome of this that we're hoping for is that we'll have a stronger economy, stronger national security posture. We'll reestablish the value of work in American society and the full potential of every American to go out and achieve their dreams. And that's something that I think is worth pursuing.
Well, I know the people of Michigan appreciate everything you do. And look, in Gretchen Whitmer's defense, as a woman, I can understand not always wanting your picture to be taken, like maybe at 7 a.m. before makeup with a retainer in your mouth. But everybody knows when you go in the Oval Office, you should be camera ready. But I guess that was not the case. Congressman Tom Barrett, thanks so much for being here, sir.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. See you soon. All right, everybody. And just a quick news update. Just a little while ago, President Trump in the Oval Office signed another executive order expanding on his first term's progress in lowering prescription drug prices. You can find all of that information aggregated over at Just the News. We are going to keep an eye on what's happening down in Georgia with Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene's town hall, and we'll be back with that after this break.
Secretary of State, last day, if this is the funding that has come from the USAID, the United States Agency for International Development, needs to be abolished. Now, USAID is going to be abolished. And thanks to President Trump and thanks to his administration for that great work, thanks to Marco Rubio, our Secretary of State, it will be abolished. You see, USAID is not aid. It's not aid. It's been used and abused, and this money has gone into places it should have never gone to. And so we're thankful to know that that is going to be a big part of the rescission package that the White House is going to be recommending, and we can't wait to get to work on that. Now, the next hearing I'd like to talk about was NPR and PBS. And as chair of the DOJ committee, we looked into NPR and PBS. And we had them come before us on our committee as witnesses. And we can go ahead and play that clip, Kayla. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting is using taxpayer dollars to actively suppress the truth, suppress diverse viewpoints, and produce some of the most outlandish, ludicrous content. After listening to what we've heard today, we will be calling for the complete and total defund and dismantling of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. operate on their own without government funding. We believe that you all can hate us on your own dime. Right. You can hate us on your own dime, but the American people don't have to pay for it. Another thing I'd like to talk about is something that is very important piece of legislation that I'm working on called Protect Children's Innocence Act. This is a bill that will criminalize sex changes in children. Go ahead and play that clip, Kayla.
I want Congress to pass a bill permanently banning and criminalizing sex changes on children and forever ending the lie that any child is trapped in the wrong body. This is a big lie. To every child in America is that you are perfect exactly the way God made you.
This is a fundamental truth. This is fundamental. God made us in His image, male and female. We are made. This is a basic founding of who we are. Children have to be left alone. They have to grow up. And my bill, the Protect Children's Innocence Act, will criminalize sex changes on children, hormone therapies, all the drugs that are being used on these kids. Think about it. These kids aren't old enough to get a tattoo. They aren't old enough to buy cigarettes, alcohol, join the military. Some of these kids aren't even old enough to get a driver's license and drive a car. There should be no way that any adult is brainwashing a child with a lie, and it is a lie. I want you to think about this. The Biden administration declared Trans Visibility Day on Easter. On Easter. This year, President Trump is celebrating Holy Week. And we will be celebrating the real meaning of Easter, the resurrection of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. This is a war of good versus evil. And when they are going after our kids, you better bet that we will stand up and not let you come after our kids. This was one of the biggest issues in the election. It's across the aisle. It's a more than 80% issue. More than 80%. Democrats and Republicans agree that we got to protect our kids. And for long enough, that lie has been told. And it's disgusting. It's repulsive. Look, adults can do whatever they want. Whatever they want. But leave our kids alone. Now, I want to talk to you. You've got a packet of information that has a lot of details. And instead of me going through it all, I'm not going to waste our time doing that. Before I wrap up, I want to talk about what happened in the past 4 years under the Biden administration that should have never happened. The government was weaponized against the American people. And after January 6th, many people were arrested. Now, I want you to know, serving in Congress, I have not watched the pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian, pro-Gaza protesters. I have not watched them be prosecuted like the DOJ went after January 6th protesters. So I want to thank President Trump. I want to thank President Trump for what he did for January 6th defendants. Kayla, you can go ahead and pull that up. The J6 pardons were answer to prayers. And the pro-lifers too. Biden's DOJ went after people that peacefully protested abortions. And he pardoned them as well. And he said it was an easy one. That was a note, a personal note to me with President Trump. So I wanted to share that with you. And our country is being returned to law and order. That's right. Under the last administration, the scales had fallen off. It was completely tipped the wrong way. And this administration is dedicated to removing the real criminals, which are the cartels. These are terrorists that came across our border. Terrorists came across our border, are here within the United States. I had a great meeting with Homeland Security yesterday in my office in Dalton. And I can't tell you, I was overjoyed at what he was telling me is happening. Now, you're not seeing this on the news, but I wish you were, and maybe we will see more of it. But because of Secretary Noem and Tom Homan's incredible work and all the people that are working with them, there's a completely different approach. He told me these agencies are working together like he's never seen before in over decades of his career. FBI, ATF, Border Patrol, ICE, and many local law enforcement, all the way from city, county, and states, all across the country are working together to track down illegal alien criminals, cartels, and terrorists that are not just living at the border. Ladies and gentlemen, they're all inside the interior of the United States.
How about the KKK?
All inside the interior of the United States. You can head out. The protest is outside. Thank you very much. Protest is outside. Protest is outside. Bye. Have fun out there. City of Ackworth is doing a great job. They have an area for protest outside. Thank you so much. And we're having a good time on the inside. Thank you. And here's what else I want to tell you about. As we've gone through these issues, here's some important work that my office can do for you. Now, in my district office, I love these ladies. I think they are incredible. And they're sitting over here at this table. Yeah, Mike Cameron's pointing them. Wave at everybody. There you go. Now, this is our constituent services work. This is the most important work that my office does for our district. And I'm so proud to brag on them. They can help you with tax problems you have, Social Security, Medicare, any problem, veterans issues. They work all of the cases. And let me tell you guys, they do a great job. They do such a great job that our office gets calls from all over the country from people begging them to take their cases. But we can't take cases from across the country. We only take your cases. And we serve all of you. So if you have any issues tonight, please make your way over to the table. They are there. They are ready. They're staying here the whole time so that they can help anyone with any specific issues. So I just wanted to let you know that's available to you. And now, just to get into it, I think I'd rather take your questions. And they gave me a full list here of the questions that we've got. So we'll go ahead and start with the first one. How can we stop rogue judges? That's a very important question. We just passed a bill in the House that addresses this very issue and reins in rogue judges from being able to completely undo the will of the American people. Now, when you, the American people, elected President Trump, and he is following through on the agenda that he promised to you. But when a single judge comes in and uses the power of his bench and rules against the president's agenda, he's ruling against the American people. And so we passed that bill in the House to stop judges from doing that, and we look forward to seeing it go through the Senate and making it to President Trump's desk. This is a good question, Cindy. Will members of Congress who took taxpayer dollars through NGOs and other illegal means be held accountable and charged with their crimes? I think NGOs are so interesting. As a matter of fact, my team on the DOGE committee and the oversight staff, we are heavily investigating NGOs. And I'll be holding a hearing on our investigation into NGOs and look forward to having some great witnesses that come before us. Now, if there is true evidence of members of Congress or their family receiving money directly from NGOs, I look forward to sending criminal referrals to the Department of Justice. Great question. When will we start seeing voting on legislation to support President Trump's executive orders? Irvin, thank you for that question. I can tell you, not soon enough. I wish we were passing them every single week. That's something that I've expressed to our leadership, is we want to see those bills coming, but I have some really good news for you. I have several bills that actually are President Trump's executive orders. One of them is the Gulf of America Act. And that'll be coming to the House floor actually really soon. So we're looking forward to that. Protect Children's Innocence Act is another one of President Trump's executive orders. He's serious about protecting children from the trans agenda. We also have one more, before I get to the next question, is we have the Make English the official language of the United States. Yes. It's a no-brainer. Over 170 countries around the world have an official language. America should have one too, and that's English. Okay. Oh, yeah. Why is MTG supporting Musk and Doge in the slashing of Medicaid, Social Security offices, libraries, and more? This is outrageous, from Sarah. Well, Sarah, unfortunately, you're being brainwashed by the news that you're watching. And, you know, a lot of Democrats pride themselves on being educated, and I suggest they educate themselves better. Because I showed you a video in the beginning, I wish you could have seen the whole clip, of Barack Obama literally talking about what we call today Doge. And so, Sarah, if you supported Barack Obama as your president, which I'm sure you did, then I'm sure you support Elon Musk and Doge as well. Now, as far as Medicaid, Social Security, libraries, and more, what we're doing is we're removing waste, fraud, and abuse, and there's nothing more important we can do for you as Americans to protect your Social Security than get rid of the criminals that are stealing it. We have to make sure that we protect Social Security. We're not cutting Social Security. We're not cutting Medicare. This was a promise from President Trump and Republicans like myself on the campaign trail, and we will live up to that promise, and no one has lost their benefits. Okay. When is the House going to get the tax cuts bill finished so the Senate can pass it too, so President Trump can sign it? This is more important than any other issue at this time. Thank you, Melanie. Melanie, I fully agree with you. I think we've got to get the tax bill and the law passed as soon as possible. So before Congress, I was a business owner, and this is my 5th year in Congress that I just started, so that was just a little more than 4 years ago. Business owners, regular Americans are not able to plan until we have a tax law that they know they can count on and they know is not going to change on them. So Congress, we're supposed to be working on that tax law in May, and I look forward to getting that done as soon as possible. I also stand by President Trump's campaign promises of no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, and no tax on overtime. I'm also a co-sponsor of the Fair Tax, so if it were up to me, I would really put that tax law in the paper shredder. All right, let's see, what do we have now? How is Congress working to make Doge cuts permanent from Rich? We will be doing that mostly in our reconciliation bill. And a lot of that will happen in the month of May. Hopefully we get that done quickly. That is also going to be about border, energy, and the tax law. As the chair of Doge Committee, I can tell you guys, I want all the Doge cuts permanent. I want to save you as much money as possible and reduce the scope and size of the federal government. And on that note, I have to give President Trump a lot of credit. He, more than anyone else, is reducing the size and scope of the federal government. And so this is a really good thing. What plan do you have to continue to grow the MAGA movement after Trump? From Marcus. Well, Marcus, you know what? I think MAGA is already on its way. It's not anything I have to do. MAGA proved that this movement is not only just a movement, it is the American people. Because the American people overwhelmingly voted for MAGA in November of 2024. That's exactly what the American people voted for. So I'd say it's up to the American people to make sure we keep it going. Do you think that President Trump will lose support from voters who are not willing to wait and see the end results of the tariffs? In other words, we know that the tariffs will give him bargaining power and in the end more business and jobs back in America. But some seem to be frightened of his aggressive moves. Sandra, that's a very good thought, but I'm going to tell you right now, don't be a panickin'. That's a new word President Trump came up with. You see, look, it took us decades to get here. Decades to get to $36 trillion in debt. It took decades for our factories to get shut down and our jobs sent overseas. It took decades for us to all fall into this terrible, it's basically a grave that America has been put in and dug by our federal government. So I support President Trump so much. And you know who he's standing up against? China. That is exactly who he's standing up against. China has stolen our intellectual property. China has stolen so much of our trade. China has spied on the United States and Americans. And President Trump is standing up for us and American companies, and he is stopping it. I don't know about you guys. I don't want a war with China, but we can beat them economically. And that's exactly what President Trump's doing. Do you see an even role for DOGE at the federal and state level, Larry? Absolutely. I think reducing waste, fraud, and abuse should be in every part of government. Yeah, it should. And I encourage you all to push to make that happen. Oh, and I think it is happening in Georgia. I've heard there's over 70 counties that are creating DOGE groups. So I think it's already on its way. What are you doing to reduce national debt, not just slow its growth, Patricia M.? Patricia, this is a great question. So reducing our national debt is going to happen in multiple ways. Here's how it's working. President Trump is growing our economy. I think he has around $7 trillion of commitments from companies that are bringing that money, $7 trillion, into our economy by bringing their companies here, manufacturing and creating jobs. Another way that we can do that is, of course, reduce the size and scope of the federal government. President Trump is already starting that by getting rid of the Department of Education, getting rid of USAID, NPR, PBS, and many other waste and fraud. He's also cutting contracts, useless contracts, things that you all would never pay for yourself if you knew what they were. And also stopping ridiculous grants funding things that we should never fund, not just here in America, but in countries all over the world. So that's a part of reducing the spending. But it's very important not only to reduce spending, but to grow our economy. And that's how we can rein in national debt. What are you doing to protect us in the 14th district from the damage and extreme hardship of Trump's tariffs? Gutting of Social Security and Medicaid. DOGE gutting our government with a chainsaw approach and the utter destruction and ignoring of our Constitution and rule of law. He is not well physically or mentally, and he's making nonsensical orders based on his whim of the day. How are you going to rein him in to protect us? Oh, poor Christina. Poor Christina. Well, I'm sure, Christina, you think that you're pretty smart. But the reality is you are being completely brainwashed by whatever source of news you listen to. The facts are this. No one has lost their Social Security. No one has lost their benefits. Criminals have lost it. Yes. Fraudsters have lost it. Yes. And illegal aliens have lost it. Yep. And if you want to defend those people where you hate our country and you hate America, what am I going to do? I am going to stand by my president. I am going to support my president. And I am going to fight for his agenda with everything I have in Congress. And that's what I'm going to do for the 14th District, because I know for a fact you are going to have more money in your pocket, you're going to have more jobs available, you're going to have a stronger economy, and you're going to have safe cities and communities to live in, and you'll be safe from terrorists, cartels, and criminals. And God bless President Trump for that. Will Trump's pledge for no income tax on Social Security be part of the final reconciliation bill this year? I think that, John, I think this is extremely important. Your money in Social Security has already been taxed. It should have never been taxed. I don't know how we got in this place, but it must be undone. Senior citizens have suffered more than any group that I talked to. It's been tragic and heartbreaking talking to many seniors over the past 4 years, because many of them I talked to could hardly pay their rent, had to choose between medication and groceries, told me how they couldn't afford to buy gifts for their grandchildren because they had to figure out how to afford to pay rent and how to figure out how to live. This is a tragedy, and because of inflation brought on this country from the Biden administration, and I'll add onto this, reckless spending for decades by both Republicans and Democrats. I'm going to say both. Inflation has gotten to a point where life is unaffordable and people's Social Security is hardly a drop in the bucket. And it shouldn't ever be that way. It shouldn't be that way. When can arrests start being made for elected politicians who have committed acts of treason? Glenda. Okay, your people are ready to round them up. Well, sadly, they don't let me arrest anybody, guys. I just have a voting card, and I can do legislation, and I can hold hearings. Members of Congress, we don't have that power, but our Department of Justice does. And if there is evidence of politicians or anyone committing such crimes, then I'm sure that President Trump's Department of Justice will follow through. What can Congress do to rein in the hate and lies other elected officials are spewing that endanger the lives of innocent people? Rep. Crockett is one example. Those inciting the vandalism and domestic terrorism against Tesla and Tesla owners are another example. Kathleen, thank you for that question. And I first want to start with recognizing Governor Shapiro and his family and say that I truly pray for them. And it was shocking to see that attack of arson on the governor's mansion. And I completely denounce that type of political violence. I denounce all political violence. Now, I can tell you that because I also live in a place where I am one of the members of Congress that usually has the highest amount of death threats. As a matter of fact, there's an active death threat that Capitol Police have been dealing with on me. This is a routine thing that happens. And Capitol Police does a great job. So does the FBI, and so does all of my local law enforcement. I'm very thankful for them. Now, so I can't control anyone else that I serve with in Congress, but I can tell you my stance is no one should be calling and threatening our staff. I don't care, Democrats or Republicans. No one should be cussing at them, telling them they're going to kill them, because my staff gets death threats too. The same, when I get them. And that just shouldn't happen. And again, I'll just say this. We have bigger problems in America. We really do. Problems that should bring us together as Americans and not divide us to the point where they're talking about killing people. Let's just remember this, that it has not been a year. It hasn't been a year since President Trump was shot in Butler, Pennsylvania. Almost assassinated on the world stage for everyone to see. Hasn't even been a year. I would hope, and here's another thing that I can't let go, is the poll that I saw where over half of Democrats support assassinating President Trump. That is absolutely disgusting and shameful. And if it doesn't matter who the president is, no one should support assassinating the president. You know what you do? You vote. You want to change your leaders, you vote. And that's how America should handle it. Why do you support a president adding the largest tax on people ever through executive orders with tariffs? Samira, inflation is coming down. Gas is coming down. Airline tickets are coming down. Your energy costs are coming down. The price of eggs are coming down because Democrats are not killing them all over the country. The reality is tariffs are not a massive tax on the American people. The tax on the American people that you've been suffering with is the inflation that Biden and the Democrats put on the American people from their absolute reckless spending for the past 4 years. How do those in Congress plan to get rid of her climbing debt in a practical way? Kathleen, another great question. Well, we've been discussing that. Doge cuts, cutting spending, growing our economy. And guys, this isn't going to happen in 2 years, and it isn't going to happen in 4 years, probably not 6 years. I think this has to be steady work by every single Congress and every single administration. And here's what I'm counting on you all, the American people, to make sure that not only myself, but all leaders know that this is a top issue for you and hold us accountable for that. Does Representative Greene in Texas, Al Green, even understand how impeachment works? I watched the Democratic Congress members spouting rhetoric all weekend about Trump's economy. Yet these same people voted for the Inflation Reduction Act and the Green New Deal scam. Both contributed to an approximate 16 to 18% cumulative inflation under Biden. How do we get this message out? Ruth, you just did it. I think your question speaks for itself. Thank you for that. There's going to be a lot of chaos and short-term pain with these new initiatives. How do we navigate them for the next election, Gary? I think this is something that the American people understand better than anybody. You know, working in Washington, D.C. is like going to a foreign country. It's like a bubble. But when you come out to America, everybody understands this. That, when your household is in debt, your credit cards are maxed out, you have to let go